everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, bringing to you another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And April 18th, 2004 marks 20 years ago at Backlash that Randy Orton made history when he defeated Mick Foley in a hardcore match to retain his Intercontinental title, thus bringing to a close their violent and personal war. And for today's edition, I am going to be talking about the success and failures of the Randy Orton versus Mick Foley 2004 feud from January 2004 to April 2004. So, when you think of Randy Orton's greatest feud, or his greatest opponents, or his greatest match, John Cena usually comes up. Or when you think of legendary and very personal wars, you probably would think of Triple H. But there is one feud with one opponent. They didn't have tons of matches, they just had one match, and that match cemented Randy Orton's position as the next big top main event performer in WWE. It wasn't Triple H, although he did help put Randy Orton on the map in Evolution. It certainly isn't John Cena, because having 1,000+ one-on-one matches doesn't necessarily make it a great feud. It was none other than hardcore legend Mick Foley. So the seeds for this violent and personal feud between Orton and Foley were first planted back in June 2003 on the June 16th, 2003 edition of Raw, when Evolution interrupted Mick Foley's in-ring promo the night after Bad Blood, and Randy Orton took it upon himself to deliver a brutal and savage promo on Foley and disrespecting the hardcore legend by making disparaging remarks about Mick Foley's legacy and his career. Randy Orton would even go as far as to say that, unlike Mick Foley, Randy Orton never had to mutilate his own body to make a name for himself in WWE, and even going as far as to say that he wished Triple H hadn't retired Foley because he would have loved to have stepped into the ring with him and beat his ass. So, Randy Orton, by this point, had started his Legend Killer gimmick, although the Legend Killer nickname wouldn't officially be coined until the following month, thanks to Triple H and Ric Flair. But you could clearly see that Randy Orton and Mick Foley were going to butt heads. But little did we know that these two, at odds with each other, would lead to a match the following year. So the following week, Randy Orton and Ric Flair would attack Mick Foley backstage in Madison Square Garden, and Randy Orton would kick Mick Foley down a flight of stairs. Now, these actions helped cement Randy Orton as a hated heel, but we wouldn't see Mick Foley again until December 2003, when he became the co-GM of Raw, thus sharing the duties with Eric Bischoff after Stone Cold Steve Austin lost his job at Survivor Series 2003, thanks to none other than Randy Orton. So Randy Orton and Mick Foley would constantly get in each other's ways, and Randy Orton would constantly continue to disrespect Mick Foley. Mick Foley would count the fall at Armageddon 2003 and award Randy Orton the Intercontinental title, thus making Randy Orton the new champion. So the next night after Armageddon, on the December 16th, 2003 edition of Raw, a match between Randy Orton and Mick Foley was made for the main event with the Intercontinental title on the line, with the stipulations that if Mick Foley beat Randy Orton for the title, Eric Bischoff would be fired. However, if Randy Orton defeated Mick Foley, then Mick Foley would be fired. But the match never took place as Mick Foley would walk away and Randy Orton would spit in Mick Foley's face, and we would not see Mick Foley until the Royal Rumble 2004 pay per view in January, where he shocked everyone by taking out Test and coming out as a surprise entrance and taking Randy Orton out of the 30-man Royal Rumble match. But prior to the pay per view, Randy Orton for weeks on end would constantly call out to Mick Foley, even going as far as to buy him a ticket. But Mick Foley would not show, and Randy Orton would call Mick Foley a coward, and even going as far as to call himself the new hardcore legend of the WWE. The next night, after the Royal Rumble 2004 pay per view on the January 26, 2004 edition of Raw, Mick Foley would come out and explain why he walked away from Randy Orton back in December 2003, and even going as far as to say that he had nothing but hate in his heart and that he was no longer an active wrestler, and actually called out Randy Orton. Randy Orton would come out alone, and Mick Foley would goad him into spitting in his face, which Randy Orton did, and this led to a very violent brawl between Foley and Orton, and Evolution members Batista and Ric Flair would come to Orton's aid before any serious damage could be done. So for weeks on end, we would see Mick Foley on the receiving end of multiple attacks from Evolution, 3-on-1 beatdowns at the hands of Orton, Batista, and Flair. We would even see Mick Foley get powerbombed through a dining table, get put through walls, kicked in the head, you name it. Evolution were determined to take Foley out of WWE. Now, just like the feud with Triple H and Mick Foley 4 years prior, which helped establish Triple H as not only the top heel in the company, but also as the next main event performer, this feud did exactly the same thing 4 years later for Randy Orton. This really helped get a lot of heat for Orton and really made him very hated in the eyes of the fans. And also, I would even go as far as to say that during this whole feud, Randy Orton really came into his own, not only as a talker, but as a leader as well, because he was the ringleader for all of the Evolution attacks on Mick Foley. And I thought at one point during this feud that Randy Orton was going to become the leader of Evolution. Now, obviously, we all know that wasn't going to be as simple as that because Triple H was still the leader. But I thought maybe this might lead to a match at WrestleMania 20. Orton would beat Foley and Triple H would lose the title, and then maybe they would all kick Triple H out of the group. That didn't happen. But as the beatdowns continued, one beatdown in particular would take Foley out of action for multiple weeks, and then we would see Mick Foley make his return in March 2004 on the March 1st, 2004 edition of Raw, where Mick Foley called out all of Evolution to the ring and screamed at Orton and said, "I'm sick and tired of the beatdowns. I'm sick and tired of the sneak attacks. No more. I've had enough." And Randy Orton would go as far as to challenge Mick Foley to a one-on-one match at WrestleMania 20, which Mick Foley refused and says, "I've got another idea. I've got a better offer. How about a 3-on-2 handicap match?" And Randy Orton would go as far as to say, "Yeah, well, you call Mr. Hollywood, you call Mr. Walking Tall, and tell him that you're on. We'll see both of you at WrestleMania 20." And Mick Foley would go as far as to say, "Well, I said I wasn't coming to WrestleMania 20 alone. Why didn't you tell him yourself?" and then we would see the return of The Rock, thus bringing the reunion of the Rock and Sock connection. Now, the only downside to this, it's not a big issue. I would have liked to have seen The Rock come out much earlier. So after Evolution took out Mick Foley, maybe The Rock could have made a surprise appearance the following week and called out Evolution for taking out his friends slash teammates. I don't know. I just feel that The Rock's involvement could have benefited more. Maybe we could have had a bit of a 3 week build up leading up to WrestleMania 20, but The Rock came in 2 weeks before WrestleMania 20, so we only had like 2 shows with him, which is a shame, really, because I think this build up really could have used The Rock's presence, but it was great to have his involvement. But I just feel that maybe he could have come out maybe in February, but maybe it was to do with his scheduling in Hollywood, so maybe he couldn't make it. So the following week on the Go Home show before WrestleMania 20 on the March 8th, 2004 edition of Raw, we would see The Rock do a This Is Your Life Mick Foley, but Evolution would interrupt the festivities and deliver a 3-on-2 beatdown to The Rock and Sock connection. So this would lead to a 3-on-2 handicap match at WrestleMania 20, where Evolution would pick up the win after Randy Orton delivered an RKO to Mick Foley, thus scoring the 1-2-3 victory for his team. We did get to see Orton mix it up with The Rock for a few minutes, but unfortunately that didn't lead to a match, but it is what it is. So the table was set for a one-on-one match between Mick Foley and Randy Orton. 2 weeks later, Mick Foley would come out on Raw after the post draft and challenge Randy Orton to a one on one match, which Randy Orton reluctantly accepted, with the stipulation that it was going to be under hardcore rules and Evolution would be banned from ringside. So, leading up to Backlash 2004, we would see Mick Foley slowly starts to revert to his old self and start cutting very crazy and creepy promos on Orton, talking about how much pleasure he was going to take in destroying the handsome young legend killer and how he was going to love it. And we would even see him revert back to his old classic Cactus Jack persona, bringing out the 2x4 in barbed wire and chasing Randy Orton all around the arena with it. So at Backlash 2004, we would see Mick Foley come out in his classic Cactus Jack attire, and the hardcore match between Mick Foley and Randy Orton with the Intercontinental title on the line was an absolute war. It was a bloodbath. Randy Orton took multiple bumps, thumbtacks. He was busted wide open, and Randy Orton would not only beat Mick Foley at his own game, but he actually thrived in Mick Foley's environment and pick up the shocking win with an RKO on the 2x4 in barbed wire, thus going from legend killer to legend. Now, this match at Backlash 2004 really helped cement Randy Orton as a tough wrestler, and he earned a lot of respect from the fans that night. He was still a hated heel, but the fans looked at Orton in a slightly different way. They looked at it like, okay, we still don't like him. He's still a cocky SOB, but he hanged with Mick Foley and survived and beat him. So, got to give the young kid his due. And also, another thing as well, he did it on his own with no help from Evolution whatsoever. So, just like the Royal Rumble 2000 and No Way Out 2000, 4 years prior, which helped cement Triple H as the top heel and the next big main event performer in the company. 4 years later, at Backlash 2004, this feud did the exact same thing for Randy Orton. It helped cement him as a top heel and the next big breakout star in the company. It's quite amazing looking back at the Orton and Foley 2004 feud. The whole feud itself lasted almost a total of 4 months, which is quite amazing, really. And they did a lot of good work during that time. Lots of great promos, lots of memorable moments, you know, and they only had one match, which is quite amazing when you look at it. And I suppose, really, you only need to have one match, but if it's going to be one match, then it's going to be a good one. And their hardcore match was excellent. I thought it was probably the best match of the whole night at Backlash 2004. Certainly one of the best matches of that year, in my opinion. I thought it was an all out war. I thought Orton looked really good. Foley did a great job putting him over. Randy Orton really showcased his skills. He wasn't just a cocky brat. He really came to play and he played very well. I thought both of these guys came out looking really good. Mick Foley didn't really need to win this match. He wasn't going to stick around. He would leave straight after Backlash 2004. But for Mick Foley to come out of retirement and put over a young wrestler in Randy Orton shows you the kind of person Foley is. And he would do that again in 2006 when he came out of retirement again and put over Edge at WrestleMania 22. So, for Orton to, work with a true legend like Mick Foley really did wonders for his career. And Randy Orton would just be shot to the moon thanks to this feud. So I really enjoyed this feud a lot. Very different to the one Triple H and Foley had 4 years prior, but still enjoyable. But both of them were enjoyable in their own way. But I kind of like the Orton and Foley feud from 2004, maybe just a little bit more for the story purpose, I would say. Foley and Triple H's feud in 2000 was fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but it didn't last as long. But I felt Orton and Foley's feud, you know, it told a much longer story and there was more layers to it. Orton calling Mick Foley a coward. You had the Rock's involvement. You had all these different things going on, and you had to wonder, will we actually see these two mix it up? From a match quality point of view, I did love the Royal Rumble 2000 match between Triple H and Mick Foley. That's one of my all-time favourite matches. But the hardcore match between Orton and Foley at Backlash 2004 was a lot more brutal. I would definitely say, though, it was a lot more brutal. Certainly a lot more bumps. I mean, Triple H and Foley's street fights did have bumps, but I looked at Orton and Foley's match. I think it was a little bit more violent, but I enjoyed both. But I really enjoyed this feud a lot. So, in terms of the success and failures of Randy Orton versus Mick Foley 2004 feud, a complete success. Nothing bad to say about it whatsoever. I know I did mention earlier, Rock should have had more involvement in the early stages of the feud, but looking back at it, I suppose everything worked out okay, but just probably would have liked to have had the Rock's involvement maybe just a little bit longer, maybe for like a month and then leave after WrestleMania 20. But apart from that, which ain't really an issue, it's just one little thing. But other than that, this was a great feud. I really enjoyed this one a lot. And I would say out of all of Orton's feuds he's had in his career, this one ranks right at the top. I know some people are going to say, oh, but John Cena versus Randy Orton, that was a much better feud. I'm not in love with that feud. As I said at the beginning, thousands of matches doesn't always make a great feud. Triple H versus Foley in 2000 had 2 matches, and they were classics. Orton and Foley had one singles match. Best match ever in their feud. Sometimes you don't need to have thousands of matches to make a great feud. Sometimes you just need one. That's all you really need. Make that one count. But yeah, a complete success. I really enjoyed this feud a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun, and Orton really came into his own as a character, as a performer, as a wrestler, everything. And this really helped put him on the map. And he was just on a big roll after Backlash 2004. No one could stop Orton. He was just red hot as a heel. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on the Orton versus Foley 2004 feud? Did you enjoy it? What was your favourite moments during this feud? What did you think of their match at Backlash 2004? Did you enjoy it? Do you think it helped put Orton on the map as a heel? And where do you rank Mick Foley in Randy Orton's greatest opponents? Do you put him up there at the top? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.